Good afternoon and welcome back to the GSC podcast with your host, Caitlin Tye. And today we're excited to have on Cairns, who's the Head of PMO at Northumbria Water Group Limited. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great, thanks, and lovely to be joining you today.
Thank you very much for being on. It's a pleasure to have you. I can't believe that it's finally getting that bit warmer. Perfect.
Lovely, a little bit of spring.
I know. May still be getting a bit of flooding, but
Well, yeah,
hope.
and obviously we keep a close eye on that.
Of course. So just to kind of give an introduction to our listeners, could you give me a brief background on how you've achieved your position which you're in today?
Yeah, so I guess I started my career as a civil engineer, and I spent my early career working in consultancy, designing and building water and wastewater capital investment schemes. So really cut my teeth on that kind of engineering design. And then I was really interested in project and program management. So I progressed into that area. And then 11 years ago, I actually joined Northumbria Water and came out of consultancy and came into the client side, and I really enjoy being on client side. So I've done a number of different things while I've been at the company, managed to get a breadth of experience across delivery, strategy, business planning, regulation, and that's brought me really to where I am today. And last year I took up the position as Head of Programme Management Office, and really it brought me back to my core in terms of my capital delivery times and delivering big investment programmes. So a really great role to be in terms of making sure that we deliver our capital schemes to a high quality, deliver the outcomes we need for the business and customers, and just assure that it's all done on time, on cost, and to the right quality.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah.
So kind of how come you decided to choose your career within
I guess
management?
it's just through that natural curiosity in your early career, I guess, isn't it? So I was that girl at school at 14 who wanted to be an engineer. It's kind of what I was kind of like. I definitely knew that I had that path ahead of me. So, I kind of charted that path through, going through the traditional academic route in terms of doing a degree. And then when I got into engineering, found that actually, rather than the more technical side of engineering, I was really interested in the project program management side. And so I very quickly in my early career navigated into that. And then I think I'm just naturally a curious person, like experiencing different things. And it's just taken me in different paths in my career, And I wouldn't, if you told me 12 years ago that I would have been in regulation, strategy, business planning, and now in PMO, I probably would have,
That's not going to
happen.
That's not my path.
That's it. But yes, I think just being open to those opportunities has just, really benefited me and given me that sort of real breadth of experience, which I love. Yeah. And this was it was the next evolution of my career, really, and a bit of a sweet spot because it's a strategic leadership role, which I really enjoy, and gave me the opportunity to just make a bigger difference in the organisation. And also I was brought in to reshape the team and kind of refocus it around a new service. So again, that was exciting because it was something new.
Always looking for the next challenge.
Yes. Yeah.
So kind of during, your career, what would you say is the toughest decision you've had to overcome?
Yeah, it's an interesting one that I think, when deciding to make a change, I think that can be quite tough. If you've got kind of like a fork in the road and you're like, do I go that way or that way? So interestingly, in my sort of late 20s, I had one of those situations, and it was quite a tough decision to make at the time. So as I said, I was that girl who always wanted to be an engineer and kind of charted that path. And then in late 20s, I kind of had almost an epiphany of is there more to the world than engineering? Because
you've always had that focus.
Because I always had that focus.
Yeah.
And I was kind of presented with an opportunity to move into a different sector and to take up a different role. And so that was quite a tough decision to make, to move away from my love, if you like, of being an engineer and being in that sector. And so I went to work for the Legal Services Commission, and I was a contract manager there. And I very much thought it's a transfer of skills because I was doing contract management in my role in a previous company. So it was a tough decision to make, not easy to move away from that, but I did it. But actually, as soon as I moved away, after I got over the initial learning something new,
of course,
which is exciting for about the first year, I soon realised it was a massive learning experience. I soon realised without the engineering, without that core purpose of what
that was your passion.
That was my passion. And so, so it was the time I stepped away from work for a little bit to have a family. And then when I came back to work, I absolutely knew that I had to get back into some form of kind of engineering sector industry. And came back into the water industry and never looked back really. I think it's, being in the water industry is such a privilege, really, in terms of what we do and the purpose that we have of providing clean, clear drinking water and taking away.
Everyone needs it.
That's it, and taking away, all the sewage and everything. So that's what really drives me. And so that, I guess, if I think back, that was quite a tough decision to make.
Yeah.
But always a learning experience.
Exactly. Not every decision you're going to make in life is going to be the right decision for you.
Yeah.
But as you say, the fact that you've been able to learn, no, this is my passion.
Yeah.
I should have been true to myself to start with.
Yeah.
Glad that I've done that, though.
Yeah, definitely.
As you say, you've learned from it, but now I know this is my route. Exactly.
And that has kind of helped me when in the future. That helped me in terms of making some of those critical decisions. Like deciding to come out of consultancy and come into client. That was another decision point. But it was, that was an easier decision to make because I was still in sector and I was still having that core purpose of what I was doing. And actually coming into client was an opportunity to make even a bigger difference. And that's what really drove me to do that particular decision.
Brilliant. So kind of on the flip side of that, what would you say your greatest achievement is?
Okay, so I think outside of work, it's got to be raising my 2 children.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So they're young adults now, and it's just, I'm so proud to see kind of the people they've become. So outside of work, for sure, that's what that is. It's quite hard to think about this, isn't it? Because we're all kind of self,
you don't want to
you don't want to promote yourself.
Amazing, it's fine.
This is it. But actually, in the last few years, something I'm really proud of myself, just like, is that I achieved fellowship of the Institution of Civil Engineers. So it's the highest kind of recognition of member. And I've been a member of the Institution of Civil Engineers since I was a graduate, since I was a student, actually. Yeah. So I've been with them a long time. And just to kind of feel like I'd been recognised for the contribution I'd made and where I'd got to in my career, it kind of was like, really, really proud. And you get to go down to London to 1 Great George Street to their lovely, impressive building to have the ceremony. And I took my dad, and it was just kind of like one of those really kind of like proud moments. So yes, I'm pretty proud of that one.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely be proud of that. And I guess as well, as you said before, that's what you'd known that you wanted to follow engineering from being a young child. Yeah. So to be able to get that, it must have been a kind of full circle moment, especially with taking your dad as well. That would have been really good.
It was special. Yeah.
So what would you say are the most important qualities for an effective leader? And would you describe yourself as a good leader and why?
Yeah. So do I have to answer the second one? Yeah. So I guess there's a few things that spring to mind there. So I think it's really important to have like a really strong vision as a leader and to be able to communicate that, just to, rally everyone around and get everyone kind of like enthusiastic and motivated around that common vision. Mm-hmm. And on the back of that, really important to have good communication skills. Of course. And I really pull out their listening skills as well, not just speaking. It's kind of being able to listen and understand what's going on. Really important is having integrity. So that's a really kind of like core value to me in terms of having, being ethical and honest. And I think just consistent in how you are with people, they know what you're going to get. And then really like also like having a lot of empathy, like understanding people and understanding what they need and providing that support when it's needed. Mm-hmm. Probably a couple of other things. You've got to make decisions as a leader. So it's kind of like...
Even if sometimes they may be tough.
They could be tough,
you are the leader.
So you've got to be decisive. So yes. So I'm a very collegiate, collaborative leader. Yeah. But then there's times where I go, okay, I've heard everyone, we've discussed it. That's what it's going to be. So we can't be dilly-dallying as leaders, I don't think. Okay. And then, we talk about it's a privilege to be a leader, and it is, because you're serving your teams, but you've got to be really resilient as well. So it's
Yeah, you've
tough.
got to, you
Yeah.
talk about motivation before.
Yes.
It's not just you've got to motivate. It's that
Yeah.
whole team you're
Yeah.
responsible
Yeah.
for, kind of.
So you've got to be able to have a level of resilience, because it can be a tough place to be being a leader. There's lots of expectations on you and stuff like that. So I think being resilient is important. And I guess to try and not swerve the second question too much. Yes, I think I am. But I would also say I'm always learning. Yeah. So like I always as well, like I have a kind of, I'm always trying to improve myself. So kind of like observing other leaders, seeing what I think works for them, what might work for me, reading blogs or, so there's kind of, and then just practicing it, and just trying and reflecting, doing a bit of self-reflection on kind of, did I handle that in the right way? Could I do it differently next time? So yes, so I've managed to progress my career to a senior leadership role in an organisation. So I guess that must say I'm doing something right.
So anyway,
Yes, but I think that's the thing. You never stop learning. I think that's the other thing. So, and really like being respectful and responsive to the people you're working with as well is important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with kind of, well, three main ones would be, as you said, communication, listening, and empathy are definitely three that really stand out for myself, yes. So obviously you've kind of talked about developing your professional skills there. With being a senior position in a very male-dominated industry, engineering probably being one of the biggest kind of male-dominated industries there is out there, how has this impacted you at all?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I was thinking back and, as a graduate engineer, I joined the industry and yeah, it was like very male dominated. I remember the first place I worked, I was the only other, from a gender diversity perspective, I was the only other woman in the office apart from the secretary, So that's back in the day. But what's really good is that, we've seen the industry come a long way since those days. Still a long way to go, I think.
Yeah.
But we have seen improvements, and I guess I just learnt to get used to it. I just learnt that was the world I was in. And it's really interesting when I look back in my earlier career. I was like, I'm an engineer. I'm not a woman engineer. I kind of never saw myself as a woman engineer, and never really too keen on going to like women only things. If I'm really honest, like in my early career, because I was like, I'm just an engineer, and
like, why have to segregate it?
Why do we have to segregate it? Yeah, but what I have come to learn over my career, and actually, we do have to role model, and we have to, for that inclusive environment, we do have to give that safe space for all different types of diversity to feel themselves and feel valued in teams. So actually, I do have a role to play to, as someone, perhaps the wrong side of a gender balance, I do have a role to play in role modelling that women can thrive and have fulfilling careers in the construction sector, So it's interesting for me to reflect on my own approach over my career.
Yeah.
Whereas in the early days, I was a bit like, I don't want to be involved in that. And now I'm, working with a group of people in the company on leading our Women in STEM network, and really advocating for encouraging young females to consider a career in the water industry. So, yeah.
I think that's the thing when kind of people, well, I know some people think, oh, well, it's females or any ethnicity or anything like that. They just think they're doing it for themselves. It's more, from my personal perspective, I think it's more about raising awareness to say, as you say, as one, rather than, yes, we want to make it more segregated. But obviously, because we're just trying to raise awareness so that we are as one.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the hardest barrier to overcome when you're trying to implement diversity inclusion?
Yeah, that's a complex topic, isn't it? I think, yeah. I guess one of the things that I reflect on is kind of the lack of the sort of personal lived experience that we have. And it maybe holds people back from engaging with kind of pushing the boundaries on, kind of creating a more diverse or inclusive and really approaching those challenges. So, yeah, I think just sometimes people feel that they don't want to say the wrong thing or, and they don't know what to say, But I would encourage people just to get involved and be part of the conversation, and be honest as well with people and say, I'm not quite sure whether this is the right thing to say, but this is what I'm thinking, and educate themselves, I think, through that. So yeah, I think just, having, kind of seeing yourself in the people that you're with as well, is important.
So why do you think diversity inclusion is such an important topic of discussion?
Yeah, I mean, everyone deserves the right to kind of pursue their career, and whatever they choose that to be. And it's really incumbent on employers to make sure they create a really inclusive working environment where they embrace diversity and where everyone really does feel valued for the contribution they make. So that's core, really. And then I guess, it just makes business sense, doesn't it? You want the best talent to help your business to thrive. And having diversity of experience, of thought, of lived experience, then that just brings richness to your team. So why wouldn't you want that? Why would you? And I think that I'm not kind of really up on the latest stats, but I think there's lots of stats, isn't it, to show that, having a more inclusive, diverse workforce leads to better business results.
Well, exactly. Because if you get very similar people in the same room, they're all probably going to have similar thoughts. So therefore, it might be a great thoughts, don't get me wrong, but having a diverse workplace, you can get feedback, different life experiences. It definitely, as you talk about the richness there, it really does help. So what would you say are the long-term consequences if we ignore or fail to recognise diversity and inclusion at work?
Yeah, I just think companies just miss out, don't they? They fail to attract the right talent because people look at a company and look at their values and what they stand for, and they think, well, that's not really for me. And then, I think it'll have a direct impact on the bottom line, or ultimately the longer term, won't it? Because you won't have the good talent, and then your competitors will probably pass you by and you'll be left behind. You won't be innovating because you haven't got that kind of diversity to help that. So yeah, I think you probably fall behind in the sector, and affects the bottom line ultimately, I would have thought.
Definitely. So kind of going back to yourself there, and what changes would you like to bring to the industry?
Yeah, so I guess maybe obviously feeling like I'm more of a role model now in that kind of in the gender space. I'd definitely like to see, more showcasing of diversity in our sector to encourage, young women to consider, career in the construction industry or the water industry. There's like loads of roles out there. It's not like the traditional, like maybe, and this might, I love putting my hard hat on, by the way, I love being on site, but that's not for everyone. But, just showing the diversity of roles and the diversity of opportunities, I think, we can do a lot more of showcasing and role modeling that to show our young girls who are coming up through the school system now that it is for them. And, because you've got to start early as well, I think, haven't you?
Definitely. Because I was one of those people that, because obviously in school, that there is like your policeman, your doctor, your lawyer, that sort of thing. But I never knew what I wanted to do because, yes, we'd have people come into school, and I mean, not every kind of industry can come into school. So I understand that. But just as you say, if you catch people when they're younger, they can start choosing the correct pathway earlier, because obviously you do your GCSEs, your A-levels, and go to uni or apprenticeships and things like that. So I guess it's just about having that education for people when they're younger to kind of
open up that there is something there, that horizon, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly.
I think the other thing probably is kind of like not to rule out people who might be part way through their career and want a career change, or you know what I mean. So we've just got to think differently about that, and maybe retraining people from different sectors. But yeah, so I guess it's that role modeling, that showcasing that it's an inclusive place to be. It's an exciting place to be, and everyone's welcome.
So, kind of, would you describe yourself as a risk taker? And if so, could you describe some risks you've taken in your career? Obviously, I know you've kind of at the start mentioned about your career path.
Yes.
Is there anything else? Or
yeah, I don't think I would necessarily consider myself to be a risk taker per se. Like, I wouldn't go to the casino and kind of like gamble my money.
I would have no money for this.
Yes. But I think what I do have is I say yes to stuff. So like I've always had that. So I've always kind of spotted opportunities and said yes. And that's kind of given me lots of opportunities along the way. And it's probably why my career has kind of, gone in different routes, but they've all been like enriching opportunities and experiences. So I think it's just that stretching myself out my comfort zone all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe how I would look at that kind of question around, am I a risk taker? Probably in that sphere, yes, because I'd be very comfortable in a particular role. And then I'm like, oh, that's a new opportunity. I could learn something new, or I could offer something different to that. Let's go and do that. Let's push myself out my comfort zone. And that's where I've got to in terms of where I am today. So it's kind of sometimes it can be tiring.
Constantly having to learn.
Yes. But it's just the way I'm wired, and it's kind of, I love learning new things. So, making a difference is like really my core value and kind of what motivates me in my work. So going and being able to make a difference in a different team, it is really exciting for me. Yeah. So stretching myself out of my comfort zone.
Just not too much.
Well,
Don't have it. Easier said than done,
yeah.
Never enough hours in the day.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Yes. Yeah.
So kind of just to round things off, looking back at your career, is there anything that you would change at all?
No, I think is the simple answer.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, I think that's it. Even the example I gave earlier where I stepped out of the industry, realised that it wasn't quite for me, and then stepped back in. No, I don't regret. Everything is everything is part of your journey, I think, in terms of that was meant to be. So no, I don't regret anything actually. And everything happens for a reason.
Exactly. You don't want to kind of look back at your life and think, oh, well, what if I'd done that? And what if I'd done that?
Yeah.
And it's learning from your experiences, whether they be good or bad.
Yeah, definitely.
And you wouldn't be where you are today without.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast today, Carol. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, it's been lovely chatting. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the GSC Executives Podcast. Today's conversation was hosted and recorded by Caitlin Tye, with editing and production managed by Stephen Smith. The podcast is produced by GSC Executives in conjunction with Daniel Owen Limited. For more details about our executive search solutions, as well as upcoming episodes, please visit our website, gscexecutives.co.uk. If you're keen to hear more industry insights, please consider subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Until next time, continue to lead with excellence.